This time, I'd like to call to order the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, City of Lake City. Tonight's date is 11th of June. Will all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we thank and praise you for this day. We thank you for this time to come together and take care of the business of your people. We pray, God, that you let us do things decent and in order. Bless each and every one represented here and meet every need. And in the name of Jesus, we pray.
May I be seated? Mr. Young, roll call.
All right. Planning and zoning?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. McKellum?
Here.
Mr. McMahon? Here. Mrs. Douglas?
Here.
Mr. Leidig?
Present.
And Ms. Wilson?
Here.
All right, a quorum is assembled, therefore, unlike last month, we can continue. Meeting minutes of our April 9th as well as our May 14th meeting were distributed electronically. I trust all members of the board, discounting some of our newest members that haven't had access to a city-owned pad yet, have had the opportunity to review those minutes as submitted electronically. At this time, are there any additions, corrections, or deletions to the minutes as sent out? Hearing and seeing none, do we have a motion for their adoption?
Move to approve minutes of April 9, 2024 and May 14, 2024.
Second.
Mr. Young, are you going to need a minute? I know you're not as swift as Mr. Angelo, but do you want us to slow down and repeat the motions and the seconds?
Who
for you?
seconded? Okay.
We'll go easy on them.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second by hand signed for the adoption of minutes. Hands down, likewise opposed. All right, we have minutes. On our agenda, please note that item 4, SPR 23-10 under old business was pulled by the agent of proponent. Therefore, the only two items we have currently on the agenda under old business and new business are both quasi-judicial hearings. I will read them into the record, and I will yield to our attorney's representative for covering a little bit of housekeeping business, and then we will move into these two petitions we still have on the list. Petition SPR 24-05, petition submitted by Randall Olney, acting as agent for Concept Companies, the owner, for a site plan review for Dollar General in the Commercial Intensive Zoning District located on parcel 081270005, which is regulated by Land Development Regulations, Section 4.13. Our second order of business will be petition SPR 24-06, a petition submitted by Christopher Boomer.
Yes.
Acting as agent for ERA Investments, the owner, for site plan review of Lake City Hotels Phase 2 in the Commercial Intensive Zoning District located on parcel 025820002, regulated by Land Development Regulations, City of Lake City, Section 4.13. This time I yield to the attorney's representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before proceeding with the hearings on these, just a little bit of housekeeping for the new members. Many of the items that will come before the three boards that you're a member of, either the Planning and Zoning Board, the Board of Adjustment, or the Historic Preservation Agency, you'll hear the term thrown around that they are quasi-judicial in nature. And what that stems from is a case, you'll hear it commonly referenced as the Snyder decision, that is, I believe, vintage 94-ish or so, 93, something like that. It comes out of Martin County. And effectively what that court decision said was that even though there are elected and appointed bodies that are generally sitting in a legislative capacity, so we're kind of going back to our old high school civics classes here, with the three branches of government, judicial, legislative, and executive. Even though there are legislative bodies that are sitting in a legislative capacity, meaning that they are policy-setting bodies, some of the decisions that they make are decisions that are typically or more customarily set aside for courts, because they are listening to a set of facts like a court would, and they are looking at the law, and they're applying that law to those facts to make a decision. And in doing that, they should be held to a higher standard in that decision-making process. They just can't make a decision that is based on their gut, like a purely legislative decision might be. And making that decision, they have to have evidence presented by parties under oath in a hearing. And those kinds of hearings became known as quasi-judicial hearings, and you'll hear them, you'll see them abbreviated QJ sometimes, or hear them abbreviated QJ. And the standard for those hearings are that the decision has to be made on competent and substantial evidence introduced into the record under oath, or documents introduced into the record that are authenticated. And as I said, in making your decision, the evidence that you base your decision on has to be competent and substantial. Competent meaning it has to be offered by somebody who knows what they're talking about. They don't have to be, they don't have to have a bunch of letters after their name, because they're an engineer or something like that. They can, it could be the example. We had a quasi-judicial hearing here back in January on I believe it was a site plan approval. We had a gentleman get up and authenticate himself as an expert in the truck driving industry. He had been a truck driver for 20 plus years, I believe. And he gave testimony about the habits of truck drivers. And so, it's just being able to show that you've got some kind of specialized knowledge on a subject is what would make you an expert. But anyway, it has to be competent, offered by somebody who is qualified to speak on the topic they're speaking about and offer information about it. And then substantial, meaning it can't be fluffy. It's got to have some substance to it, number one. And then also substantial, meaning that there's got to be, more than just a passing glance at the information offered. They've actually got to give you something that you can sink your teeth into. It's one of those things that's hard to describe, and I'm not probably doing a great job doing it, but it's got to have some substance to it. So that is competent and substantial evidence. And you'll hear me at the beginning, and we do it every time, because each one of these is just like a court case. It's an independent hearing where we're establishing a record so that if there is an appeal, we've got that record to look back to, and the other parties have that record to look back to when it possibly goes to a court or to the city council on an appeal. They've got that record. And so we want to establish for the record what the standards are. We want to establish for the record what the law is and the evidentiary standard we're using. The other thing we want to establish for the record is whether you'll hear the term ex parte communications. That just means, have you had communications with anybody out in the community about the matter that's before you? There's nothing wrong with it if you do. We just need you to declare it. Except if I go around, and I'm going to do it in a few minutes for the two matters that we're going to hear in the Planning and Zoning Board, I'm going to ask each individual member, have you had any ex parte communications? Did you run into anybody at the grocery store, see anybody at church, and they talked to you about this? Did you read about it in the paper ahead of time? That would be an ex parte, a communication outside of this forum. And if you have, all you need to do is say, yes, I did. My next question is going to be, will that conversation or that communication have any influence on your ability tonight to give a fair and impartial hearing to this particular matter and base your decision on the evidence offered into the record here tonight? And if you say, will have no bearing at all, I can give a fair hearing, then we're good. Every once in a while, somebody will say, the information that I received, I can't hear this fairly. And that's fine, and all you need to do is declare it, you haven't done anything wrong, just say so, and what you would need to do would be to recuse yourself in that hearing and not cast a vote in it. If something is so, maybe the property being considered for a rezoning is the property right next to you. And you just, in your gut, you just don't want to see this happen, it affects you too closely. Then, you just, and your neighbors have come to you because of it, then you would need to declare that. Not only would that be an ex parte communication because your neighbors talk to you, it would also be a conflict of interest because it affects the value of your property. So we will go through those, that process of questioning and laying out that foundation for each hearing that we have that's a quasi-judicial hearing. And then from there, we'll go forward with a process of letting staff just introduce the matter in a very basic format. And then the applicant will give up and give a more detailed presentation of their application. City staff will respond with their analysis. All of this will be under oath. You'll get a chance at the appropriate time after all the information's been entered in to ask questions of them. And then they'll get to offer some closing comments, and then you'll get to discuss amongst yourselves and offer a motion. And so, that's kind of a thumbnail sketch, and depending on the level of controversy, the number of people in the room, Mr. Leidig may run that, in a very efficient and speedy manner because we've got the luxury of being able to do so because we don't have a lot of interested parties. On other occasions, if we've got a room full of folks, you'll see it become a much more formal affair. So, we just kind of ebb and flow in formality based on the situation we're in and the matter before you. So with that, the chairman has introduced the two matters that are before you tonight in a quasi-judicial manner. You've seen them on the agenda. So going down the dais, Mr. McMahon, do you have you had any ex parte communications in these matters? Okay, Ms. Douglas and Chair Leidig.
Only those in my official capacity working with the department to put together our agenda and our matter of work for the evening.
Okay, and would those communications affect your ability to give an impartial hearing
They
tonight?
do not.
Okay. Ms. Wilson?
Either not.
Okay, and Ms. McCallum? Okay, so no one on the board has had ex parte communications. As I mentioned, and I've actually covered a lot of what I would normally just kind of read from my notes here in giving the initial presentation, but at this time, as I mentioned, everything that you decide would be based on facts offered into evidence by the witnesses and the documents offered into the record by witnesses. If Mr. Young, if you're going to present on behalf of the city, if you could just stand and take an oath. And this would be to both matters. I'm swearing you in for both of these matters that are before the board in a quasi-judicial manner tonight. Do you swear that the testimony you're going to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And I didn't know. I thought you might offer your testimony if I were there. So
I don't know if you want me to vote or not.
it's up to you.
I prefer podium.
Okay. He can talk and take notes at the same time. So you have been duly sworn. Board members, the proposed resolution before you is Resolution 2024 PZ-SP05, which states a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Lake City, Florida, approving an application for approval of a site plan for a proposed retail store within the corporate limits of the City of Lake City, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. Mr. Young, could you provide an introduction and summary of the proposed resolution application?
Yes. This property is located at the northwest corner of the intersection of State Road 47 and southwest of Marvin Burnett Road. This is a Dollar General project. Future land use is commercial. The proposed future land use is commercial. The zoning designation is commercial intensive, and the proposed zoning is commercial intensive. And the proposed use of the property is retail. This land is conducive for use for LDR section 413 4.13.2 and 4.12.2.1. And city staff had nothing but general comments on it, such as tap applications are required.
And does that complete your whole presentation, or do you have more to?
Well, they have submitted in all of their analysis, their stormwater system report, traffic analysis. The city staff had no issues with it at all.
And you're moving all of that into the record for additional review?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chair, at this time we will hear from the applicant.
All right. Will the agent for owner please approach? Swear the testimony you're about to give before this board this evening, to the best of your knowledge and ability, is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I do. Very nice. Can you please provide your name with spelling and legal address of record to Mr. Young?
All right, my name is Cole Menhennet, Cole, C-O-L-E, Menhennet, M-E-N-H-E-N-N-E-T-T. And the address is 11801 Research Drive, Alachua, Florida, 32615.
All right.
Okay, we prepared a small presentation. As far as moving these slides, you just want me to tell you when to go to the next slide. All right, so as mentioned, this is a Dollar General.
Is your microphone on? Can you give that a tap for me? Okay.
Does that matter?
Just want to make sure the folks out at home can hear you.
Okay, good deal. So as mentioned, this is a Dollar General commercial retail store. It's located at the northwest corner of the intersection of Southwest Marvin Burnett Road and State Road 47. You can go to the next slide. You can actually skip this slide. It zooms in. So there's a image of the project site. The intent is to construct a 10,640 square foot Dollar General, associated parking, utility infrastructure, and stormwater management system, and on tax parcel 08127-005. You go ahead to the next slide. So as you can see, there's a depiction of the site layout. Basically, that rectangle centered in the center of the page is the building. Surrounding that is the parking, and over to the left side of the site is a stormwater management facility. Access to the site is provided on the south side, adjacent to Southwest Marvin Burnett Road. You can go to the last slide. There's my contact information, and I'm here to answer any questions about the project.
Did you wish to, did you wish to enter your presentation into the record?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. If you could just make sure Mr. Young gets a copy of that.
And it'll need an exhibit number?
Mr. Young can assign it one, I think, with only 2 sets of exhibits were probably.
You have a copy.
Still has to be done.
Yes, it does.
So with the new format we're going into, we're still at the point where this is questions for the proponent from the board, as we do not have a intervener present for this.
I think in an abundance of caution, I would just ask if there's anyone in the audience that has any information they wish to offer on this particular application before moving to questions and answers from the board.
So prior to being able to question the proponent, we need to have all public comment in.
Correct, yes.
Okay. You may be seated. I remind you, you are still under oath. This time, is there anyone present that would like to speak either for or against petition SPR 24-05 as presented by agent of owner? Seeing and hearing none, ordinarily this would be the point where we would call for a motion to close public comment. Will we still do that, or will we wait until the proponent has had a chance to come back up and be interviewed by the board?
I would do it after all of the information has been received from the applicant and city staff, depending on who the questions are being asked of.
Okay. You can reapproach. All right. Questions for the proponent from members of the board?
How many jobs are being supplied by the Dollar General?
That's a good question. I would have to look into that with the developer and get back with you. want to speak to that on the record.
One question I have, I know that development over in this quadrant of the city has been proposed on a number of different occasions. Usually the room's pretty full, we have 50, 60 people in here whenever something gets proposed for that area of town. One of the most critical comments that comes up during the public comment phase of those hearings involves transportation carrying capacity. I see you guys have submitted a transportation plan as part of your site plan review. Would you take an opportunity and just casually, for the benefit of some of the newer members of the board, can you walk us through that analysis?
Yeah, absolutely. So first I'd like to point out that we did utilize a different traffic consultant engineer on this project. But with that said, I do have the results summarized right here. And basically the findings were that there are a total of 32 peak AM trips proposed and 71 peak PM trips proposed, which is not a very substantial increase in traffic. The conclusions of the report were that neither left turn lanes nor right turn lanes would be warranted on either State Road 47 or on Southwest Marvin Burnett Road. It says there's very little disruption to the traffic with the addition of the project driveways and generated project traffic.
And in addition to being produced internally, this was vetted through the state,
That's correct.
and they had no comments?
That's not to my knowledge.
Any other questions for the proponent? All right, you may be seated.
All right, thank you.
With no other interested parties wishing to speak at this time, discussion amongst the board and city departments. Any heartburn, Mr. Young?
No, sir.
All right, seeing and hearing no further discussion amongst members of the board at this time, do we have a motion to close public comment on petition SPR 24-05 as presented?
Motion to close public comment on SPR 24-05.
Second.
Motion McMahon and Ms. Mary with the second. Mr. Young.
Got it.
By hand sign, all in favor? Hands down, likewise opposed. All right, at this time, public comment is over. With the new format we're going through, is there any other business we need to conduct prior to calling for the yeas and the nays from Mr. Young?
Mr. Chair, I would just like to offer again, for purposes of the record, that the decision of the board should be based on the evidence provided by sworn witnesses and may be adopted if the proposed site plan complies with the relevant criteria set forth in section 13.11.3 of the Land Development Regulations. It's a fairly lengthy section of the regulations that I have read into the record before, but in lieu of that, I've provided a printed copy for you there to reference tonight. And that is verbatim from the Land Development Regulations. At this time, if the board wishes, you can discuss the application, the testimony, and any findings of fact upon which you wish to make a decision and vote on the proposed resolution number 2024 PZSP05 following an appropriate motion and second. If you wish to adopt it, an appropriate motion would be to adopt the resolution as read by title only.
We have a motion on the floor for either approval or disapproval of SPR 24-05.
I've got a little heartburn for trucks coming in and out on Marvin Burnett, so I'm going to move to deny SPR 24-05.
Do we have a second? All right, for lack of a second, that dies. At this time, do we have a motion to either approve or deny SPR 24-05 as presented by Agent Bummer?
Motion to approve.
Ms. McCollum with the motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
And the second is our newest member, Ms. Wilson. This time we have a motion and a second. Mr. Young, would you please call the yeas and the nays?
Mrs. McKellum,
Yes.
Mr. McMahon,
No.
Mrs. Douglas,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy.
Yay. All right, by a non-unanimous vote, we have approval on SPR 24-05 by title with the new procedural rules that we have in effect. Mr. Barrister, is there anything else I have to do other than bring that gavel down and move on to the next thing?
That's it.
Very nice.
Yeah, you good. He was stuck, he know what he lost a one. He know what he had lost a one, right? Good to go.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I'd like to introduce new business, petition SPR 24-06. It's already been read into the minutes earlier during this session. I will forego that. Any housekeeping you need to take care of before we can bring Mr. Young out to introduce this?
So we would need to read the resolution by title into the minutes. And so the actual resolution you're approving that adopts the application is Resolution 2024 PZSP06, a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Lake City, Florida, approving an application for approval of a site plan for a hotel within the corporate limits of the City of Lake City, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. And at this time, it would be appropriate for Mr. Young to come forward and offer his introduction.
Mr. Young, come on down.
This is Lake City Hotels Phase 2, parcel number 02582-002. This is future land use is commercial, proposed future land use is commercial. The zoning designation is commercial intensive. The proposed zoning is commercial intensive. And the proposed use of the property is for a hotel. The land is conducted for use per the LDR 4.13.2 and 4.12.2.11. This is located in a flood zone A. Staff review, we have nothing beyond the ordinary comments. Again, TAP application is required. The FDOT had no comments. Swanee River Water Management, this already has a permit number, ERP 023-209-165-4. School board has no comments, and county says no issues were identified at this time, and the rest of the staff had no issues.
Can you review what a flood zone A is?
Flood zone A is a flood zone, but it does not have the base flood elevation determined. And this can easily be remediated with retention ponds.
Thank you.
So the hotel does need to go up on stilts.
Or have flotation devices.
All right.
Nice deals.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Young, are you entering your reports into the record?
Yes, I am.
All right, thank you. And at this time, Mr. Chair, it would be appropriate for the applicant's representative to come forward, be sworn in, offer their presentation.
Nice. Now.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Swear the testimony you're about to give before this board this evening to the best of your knowledge and ability is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I certainly do.
Very nice. Name with spelling and legal address of record for Mr. Young and for the record of these proceedings.
Yes, Mr. Chair, my name is Christopher Gamir, Christopher, and my last name is the hard one, Gmuer. I'm a professional engineer. My address is 1934 Northwest 21st Street, Gainesville, Florida. And I'm representing the owner as the applicant on this project and the engineer of record on the design on this project.
Got that, Mr. Young?
Yes, I got it.
All right.
So I'll begin, Mr. Chair. So this says phase 2, but this is actually part of sort of a 3-step process of a history on this entire project. So we came to the city back in, I want to say 2017. Of course, everything before COVID is kind of watching how that all happened there. And we did a master plan with the city, in which we planned out this entire area. So to answer your question about flood zone A, there was a master stormwater pond that got categorized as a FEMA floodplain A in that location. With that master plan, we moved that stormwater pond to additional site to the south on property that would have been acquired by the ownership and recalculated all the flood and interconnected all the flood zones, including a canal to the east, all the stormwater runoff from the hotels and restaurants from the west, the FDOT drain from US 90 that comes south through the site, and recalculated everything and compensated for all the floodplain and met all current new standards that changed in 2004 after the 2004 hurricanes that came through the entire property. So that was all solved at that point in time, and construction was completed on all the infrastructure. So all the stormwater improvements are all in place, the water mains are all in place, the sewer mains are all in place for this master plan. Additionally, all of the roadway connections. So this master plan site connects with everybody around us except to the east. So when I say everybody around us, I mean to the Holiday Inn to the west, okay? To the Chick-fil-A property to the northwest, and to the 2 restaurants, Longhorn and Olive Garden. Did I get that right? Perfect, all right. I believe also Budget Inn, there's a connection as well, but we can't go to the east because none of those sites had stub outs provided for us. There's a canal to the east. Oh, and then we can't go south because there's wetlands to the south. So that's where it kind of makes sense to put the stormwater pond all the way at the south next to the wetlands so they could share water between the natural wetlands to keep them saturated, but also provide stormwater retention for the tile area with flood control. So that was the master plan. Then I believe in 2018, we came with the phase 1 hotel. And that's almost being constructed right now. If you're coming through that area, they've built a parking lot at the front. And nowadays with internet, you don't go and choose a hotel just by driving down the highway anymore looking for a sign. You already have on your app, you already figured out where your things are gonna be, you already have it mapped out. So that's where we're able to keep an out parcel up front for maybe a future restaurant along the roadway there and put all the hotels more centrally inside that block. That also allows for multiple entry points to get to that hotel and also shared parking lot between all of them. So that was sort of the vision of the master plan. And the phase 1 that's almost done, and so now we're coming with phase 2. And as I said, we've already done the stormwater design, stormwater permitting. The only thing we have to permit from a stormwater perspective is we have to update that old permit to say, all right, now we're doing phase 2 of it, and the water management district checks that we met all the different criteria. And we had to do a full as-built of what was constructed to make sure it met what was permitted in 2017. And they're kind of finishing up that review right now. But you all were way faster than from that standpoint. The traffic was projected with all of the maximum development of this property back in 2017. And of course, we're nowhere near that right now. And I think we probably overestimated in 2017 because we're kind of filling up the site faster than we maybe thought. So we're probably not going to get anywhere near what we planned for on the property on the site. So let's see if there's anything remaining here. Yeah, so we're trying to keep the hotels sort of in the center with parking around the entire perimeter, the short shared drive aisle. So it should be a good addition to this area, a nice central location for hospitality in the city. And I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
All right, you may be seated. We may call you back up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, at this time, is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak either for or against petition SPR 24-06 as presented by Agent DeBoner? All right, hearing and seeing none, you may reapproach. This time, do any members of the board have any questions, comments, or clarifications of the agent or proponent?
Yes, so, we have hurricane season approaching. It's gonna last for a few months. The traffic has increased tremendously through Florida, especially Lake City by being the gateway. So I'm just wondering, since you're speaking about criteria, will the guests have access to information as to how they will be kept safe, or will be instructed of how they will be kept safe? I noticed that it's a really big hotel, so a lot of people, and so I just wanted to ask that, will there be precautions taken, or will they have access to the information as to know how they could be kept safe or be able to, through the months?
Sure, so I think the biggest thing that I was surprised by is that Lake City tends to be a staging ground for a lot of the emergency crews. And so already at the Holiday Inn, their parking lot gets filled when we have a storm approaching.
Okay.
And there's gonna be emergency personnel all over this area, as Lake City tends to be a hot spot for preparing for a storm. So I don't know how anybody could not talk to the electric crew next door about which direction they're going and which direction to take. And especially being Lake City, you have a lot of options about which direction you want to go, north, south, east, west. So I don't think it would be much of a problem at all.
Sounds good. I'm very excited about it.
At our previous meeting, we had the opportunity to hear a petition regarding a large RV park development that's going just to the south of this. Obviously, you're not going to have a connection through to Commerce Drive due to the wetlands. This was an RV park in the past, I believe.
Yes, I believe it was in and out. Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Chair.
Given the fact that larger, more substantial vehicles have a habit of clogging up our intersections near that interchange. One thing I wasn't able to fully determine from some of the graphics in the site plan itself, how many RV slips are you planning on having for guests that come with oversized vehicles? And will there be on-site truck parking?
So on-site truck parking is not planned for this location. Many times when you see trucks, they select sort of hotels that have overflow areas. For example, the Holiday Inn today tended to get semi-truck traffic, that kind of truck traffic, because there was a large empty lot where this hotel is being proposed. So that's no longer something that this hotel will be looking for, to have large vehicle parking, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there will be people who have maybe a trailer that they're pulling, or they're tired of getting in at 2 o'clock in the morning, they just want to have a place to sleep at night. And that's where the shared parking around the entire perimeter and the 3 rows of parking that we provide with, what's the best way to describe it? You know when you pull into a parking space and you share almost like a bumper with the car right across from you? And if there weren't those cars there, you could just drive through the parking lot because it's open. Yes, you still have tree islands, but you're able to freely move around the parking lot. That's where it is here, and so it allows for someone who maybe is pulling a travel trailer who's coming in, who wants to pull in. There's probably gonna be a perimeter spot somewhere where they could pull in and maybe take up 3 or 4 or 5 spaces with their trailer if they needed to. But that's not the kind of traffic that this hotel is looking to attract.
Okay, so you're not planning specified RV parking, but on an ad hoc basis, you can accommodate an RV or 2 as needed. And currently, internally, you're prohibiting overnight, large truck parking.
That's not what they're going for. Now, people come in and they pull in and they park places. And I think one thing that helps is our main drive off of 90 is a very long drive aisle coming in. And because we don't have a lot of disruption from the parking lot, there's not a chance for like a truck coming in clogged sort of traffic flow coming into the site, but it's not encouraged. I don't know if we would say we would completely just say get out of here, but I'm sure we get a lot of complaints from our other hotel guests. But we have the capacity if it needed to. Leading to me saying when we have the emergency responding, they have their electric line crews that'll come in and maybe they're pulling a roll of electrical wire behind them. And many times you'll see them lined up in an organized fashion in the parking lot. And this parking lot, because it's shared and more open, could accommodate emergency crews easier. But a semi truck would just wouldn't work really well. I hope I answered your question.
You did.
It's hard to say.
Right, any other questions or points of clarification for the proponent? You were shaking yes, then you were shaking no, Sean? No. Oh, okay. All right, you may be seated.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, at this time, having heard from the proponent, having called for those either in favor or against, having heard from all the parties involved, do we have a motion to close public comment and evidentiary hearing for petition SPR 24-06?
Motion to close.
Ms. Wilson?
Second.
Ms. Douglas? By hand sign? Aye. Hands down? Likewise opposed? All right, this time public comment and testimony is over. Discussion amongst members of the board, city department, all good? Anyone have anything they would like to put on the record before we call for a motion for a vote? All right, prior to calling for a motion, I believe you have some housekeeping.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the decision of the board should be based only on evidence provided by sworn witnesses. In addition, the application may be adopted if the proposed site plan complies with the relevant criteria set forth in section 13.11.3 of the land development regulations, which you have before you. At this time, the board may discuss the application testimony, any findings of fact upon which you wish to base a decision, and vote on proposed resolution 2024 PZSP06, following an appropriate motion and second. Should you wish to adopt the resolution, an appropriate motion would be to adopt resolution 2024 PZSP06 as read by title only.
Any further discussion amongst members of the board prior to a call for a motion? All right, at this time, do we have a motion to either approve or deny SPR 24-06 by title as read earlier? I gotta start including that now, don't I? As read by title earlier.
Motion to approve SPR 24-06.
That's Ms. McKellen with the motion,
I'll second.
and Mr. Sean with the second. We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing, hearing none. Mr. Young, will you please call the yeas and the nays?
Ms. McKellen?
Yes.
Mr. McMahon?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Leidy?
Yay. All right, by unanimous vote, SPR 24-06 as read into the record by title has been approved. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, at this time, we don't have anything planned for our workshop. However, if you want to open this up to our newest members, this would ordinarily be the portion of the meeting where we have non-business related housekeeping we need to discuss, like for example, Mr. McMahon, myself, Ms. Mary, no doubt you've got your emails about your Form 1. Be sure to get those filled out. I use the new online portal. It is not nearly as difficult as the Form 6. you have anything you want to add to?
I did, it just dawned on me I did not, because we were focused on quasi judicial hearings. For the new members, we did not talk about the Sunshine Law. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Workshop
existence.
topic.
Yes,
I yield the
exactly.
floor.
So we'll cover it briefly, and then we'll cover it more extensively, maybe in a more formal workshop once we have a full board. I understand there may be more appointments coming. So generally speaking in Florida, not generally speaking, specifically speaking in Florida, there is a creature called the Sunshine Law, is what it's referred to. And it encompasses two basic principles that citizens have access to the records of their governmental entities, number one. And with a few exceptions at the state level for the legislature, members of governing bodies cannot communicate between themselves regarding matters that may appear before that body. So, Ms. Wilson, if you run into Mr. McMahon in Publix and you see him, feel free to talk about the weather. Feel free to talk about the traffic, but please do not talk to him about anything that may come before this board, which could even include the traffic, quite honestly, if it's pertaining to something that's a development that may be out there of concern. The penalties for that can range from civil penalties imposed by the State Ethics Commission all the way through to criminal penalties and criminal prosecution by a state attorney if they choose to prosecute it. But if you have emails you want to send them to staff, send them to me, but you cannot send emails to other members of the board on board business. You may receive sometimes an email to everybody from staff. If you receive that, don't hit reply all. You can all receive the same information from me or from staff, but you cannot disseminate information amongst yourselves to everyone. But you can disseminate it to Mr. Young, to Mr. Angelo, who's not here tonight, to me, for us to look at, and then we could include it in a board packet at the next meeting for discussion. If you have any questions about that, please talk to Mr. Young. Give me a call. I'll make sure you've got my card before we get out of here tonight so that you can email me if you need to, or give me a call. I'm usually very easy to get in touch with during the day. If anything comes to mind before you do it, just ask ahead of time. Also, with reference to conflicts of interest, if there's anything coming before the board that may inure to your personal benefit or to the personal benefit of a close family member, you should reach out to me and or Mr. Young and have a discussion about that so we can advise you as to whether you do have conflict or not. And we'll get into it in more depth, and we've got a presentation on this that we'll do when we've got a full board seated. Okay, thank you.
Just for clarification, if it's something that we just have to do with the operations of the board, sending out informing the chair, hey, I'm out of town next week, I will not be able to attend the meeting. They can inform me of presence versus absence, or does that have to also go through the administrator?
I would advise that any communication that's intended for another board member go through Mr. Young's office. Because it's scary how quickly something that's innocuous can turn into a comment or discussion about something that is not. So if you're not going to be here, just reach out to Mr. Young. They're the appointed staff members for the board. They'll coordinate all of that. I'm sure he'll coordinate with the chair to let the chair know, and then also probably be keeping close tabs, maybe a little less close now that we've got a few more members here, but close tabs on whether we're going to have the requisite numbers to have a board meeting or not. But I would just avoid anything board related amongst yourselves. Direct it all to Mr. Young, and then he can decide the best way to treat it once he gets it. So whether it's something that needs to be included in an agenda packet, brought before the board as an agenda item, and he'll discuss that with the chair as well before making those determinations. So.
And then to reiterate, the sunshine aspect of this that you covered, no conversations about anything that has a likelihood to come before the board. Not just stuff that's on the agenda, but stuff that we may know is coming down the pipe is not to be discussed amongst ourselves.
Amongst yourselves.
Now, something that may have concluded a year ago, sitting at the Starbucks or whatever, asking Miss Mary, it's like, man, that hotel they built last year sure looks good, doesn't it? That's on the table.
So that you can talk about things that have already happened in the past over which you're not gonna make any decisions, but again, I can just tell you from experience, it's real easy to go from that to, yeah, I sure hope that new hotel they're building is as nice as the one they built 3 years ago. And so, you know, just again, best to stay away from that kind of thing altogether if you can avoid it. It's real easy to fall into a trap really quickly if you're not careful.
Any additional questions from some of our newest members? All right, throughout the year, if there are certain aspects of the land development regulations or how this board operates, this section of our agenda, workshop, is where that would be appropriate. Shoot David, shoot Mr. Angelo an email saying, you know, can we workshop out, you know, the difference between commercial intensive versus commercial highway interchange? And we can have a presentation put together, we can have a robust discussion. This is our opportunity to conduct our business in workshop session as opposed to conducting the business of those that come before us. All right, anything else under workshop? All right, seeing and hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn planning and zoning?
Second.
Wilson and McMahon on the second. By hand sign. Hands down, likewise opposed. All right. We stand adjourned in planning and zoning. At this time I call to order the Board of Adjustment, City of Lake City. It's June 11th, 2024. Roll call shall remain the same. Meeting minutes of our two previous sessions, May 9th, 2024, and, April 9th, 2024, and May 14th, 2024, were distributed electronically. I assume everyone that had access to a city email has had the opportunity to review those. This time, are there any additions, corrections, or deletions to the minutes as submitted electronically? Seeing and hearing none, do we have a motion for their adoption?
Motion to adopt.
Second. Ms. McCellum, Mr. McMahon on the second. By hand sign. Hands down, likewise opposed. By unanimous vote, we have approval of the last two sets of minutes for the Board of Adjustment. We have no old business. We have one item of new business that was postponed. Special exception, petition 24-04 submitted by Dr. Juan Chisholm, owner, for a special exception for American Nation Builders Christian Academy in a residential office zoning district regulated upon parcel 13811-000, located at street address 239 Southeast Bay Drive, which is regulated by Land Development Regulations, City of Lake City, section 4.10. As we are in a new general session, having gavelled out planning and zoning, would you care to ask your housekeeping questions?
Let's see. As to,
Do you need to ask about ex parte for SE 24-04, now that we're in a new meeting?
Mr. Chair,
I was gonna say, I'm not
this
thinking
one's
that's
been
been
postponed.
It's not postponed until today. It's
Oh, I thought it was
postponed from
postponed
today.
until today.
No,
That's why I was
Okay.
looking a little
It's
confused.
postponed today
I saw postponed on the
to
last
a
agenda also.
later meeting.
Understood.
This was not in May.
We had this prior. Because didn't we also do a land use change on this one at some point? Or maybe a site plan review? All right, well, that having been postponed, not being a postponed item, in that case, anything for the benefit of the board under workshop? Seeing and hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn Board of Adjustment?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Ms. Wilson, Ms. Douglas on the second. By hand sign? Hands down? All opposed, likewise? All right. Board of Adjustment stands adjourned. All right, this time, I would like to call to order the Historic Preservation Agency, City of Lake City. The date is June 11th, 2024. Our roll call shall remain the same. Electronically, the meeting minutes of April 9th, 2024 and May 14th, 2024 were distributed to all members of the board having access to such electronic media. I trust everyone had the opportunity to read and review those minutes. At this time, are there any additions, corrections, or deletions to the minutes as electronically submitted? Seeing and hearing none, do we have a motion for their adoption?
Motion to adopt meeting minutes of April 9th, 2024 and May 14th, 2024.
Second.
Man with the motion, McCallum with the second, Mr. Young. By hand sign, all in favor? Hands down, likewise opposed? All right, by unanimous vote, we have approved meeting minutes from our last two general sessions. Old business, we have a certificate of appropriateness petition that could not be heard at our last meeting due to a lack of quorum. COA 24-11, submitted by Carol O'Driscoll as owner, requesting a certificate of appropriateness in a residential single-family 3 zoning district as established in section 4.5 of the Land Development Regulations, City of Lake City, located within the Lake Isabella National Historic District, as established in section 10.11.2 of the Land Development Regulations, and lying on property described as City of Lake City Parcel 12773-000 with a street address located at 160 Southeast St. John Street. Do you have any housekeeping issues you'd like to make at this time?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to inquire the board if anyone's had any ex parte communications regarding this particular matter. All right, Mr. McMahon, none, Ms. Douglas, Ms. McCullough.
None other than those are my official duties.
All right, no effect on your decision?
No effect.
Okay, so seeing none, there are no issues with ex parte communications. Just a reminder that everything would need to be offered under oath and the decision made based on competent substantial evidence.
Pull this one up. All right, this time do we have a proponent for COA 24-11?
Yes.
Now? You swear the testimony you're about to give before the board this evening to the best of your knowledge and ability is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very nice. Name with spelling and legal address of record for Mr. Young.
Tyler Turner, Tyler-Turner. And my office address or home address?
Check.
Let's do the company address, 180 Northwest Amenity Court, Lake City 32055.
Northwest, I'm sorry, what?
Amenity Court.
Amenity. Okay.
All right.
We are trying to do a re-roof project at 160 Southeast St. John Street. It's currently a metal shingle roof, and we're going back to the metal of similar color.
And examples of that are in the package. I remember seeing them.
It's not those kind of distinctive old metal plates, but
No.
those are metals, like metal shingles.
I think up there is metal shingles now. It's an older style. I'm not sure it's offered anymore. But we're going back with a newer style Gulf rib, 3-foot wide panel, and she opted for a similar color. I think the color specifically is called ash gray.
Are there some other houses around there that have metal roofs?
Yes, I think there's another one next door we did about 10 years ago. That one was a red colored metal roof, and I think one of the attorneys in town that's on the other side of the street, he has a blue metal roof, I believe.
Okay. It's a great old house. When was it built? I didn't catch it in the document.
When was it built?
Just curious.
Chuck Turner would have been built probably early 1900s. Now, as far as the procedure for doing this roof over, the original historic shingles will still reside under the roof over?
No, we are removing what's up there now.
So you're removing the old 100-plus-year-old historic material to put the new product on?
Correct. A lot of it is leaking, and with the new residential codes, you need a vapor barrier in order to keep an attic, secure and away from rot. So we're installing a new decking on top of the existing trusses that are up there, and then a new metal roof on top of that.
All right. As far as the guidelines present in Article 10 of the Land Development Regulations, did you have the opportunity to review the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation of historic structures as it relates to replacement of roofing products?
I haven't had a chance to review that specific document, but we do everything according to code, with permitting in the state of Florida.
And then I don't see a example. I see your color swatches. What is the proposed roofing product itself going to look like in terms of visual appearance?
It's about probably 90% of the metal roofs you see around new metal roofs. It is the same type of metal that we installed next door about 10 years ago, and the same type of metal as the property across the street. It's a 3-foot wide panel called Gulf Rib. Has a rib every 9 inches, and then exposed fasteners every 2 foot on center.
I'm just seeing the little pictures or what have you. I don't know if there are a lot of neighbors around at the time, or, in this area. If so, I know there's gonna be a lot of bamming and knocking and all that going on.
Yeah.
Have they been made aware that this project, may be taking place and,
Yeah, there's actually, we had to send out letters to everyone, I believe, within a certain radius to each of them, letting them know that this project was commencing and it was going before the board. But yeah, the neighbors are well aware. The old neighbor, the one directly next door that would be the most affected is a good friend of mine, and I see him on a regular basis, and he's well aware.
Our land development regulation requires that all residents within a 300-foot radius be notified by certified mail.
All right, anything else for the proponent? All right. At this time, do we have anyone else in attendance that would like to speak either for or against petition COA 24-11? All right, seeing and hearing none. At this time, do we have, correct me if I'm wrong, Clay, because a COA is not a quasi-judicial affair, we can close public comment now and then yield over to discussion amongst members of the board?
So,
Or do we need to be in the business of treating a COA as a quasi-judicial matter as well now?
it is, if my understanding is correct, you've got a set of historic preservation criteria based on both federal rule and local regulation. Is that not correct, that we're looking to?
Federal, state, and local guidelines.
Federal, okay, and state, got them at all levels. And so we're looking at 3 different sets of rules, regulations, and codes, and we're applying them to a particular set of facts and circumstances regarding a particular building and the area where it is situated and the surrounding buildings where it is situated, to make sure that in this case, for example, the roof is appropriate for the historic area and the historic nature of the building. Is that a correct assessment of what we're looking at right now? Okay, I see nodding, and so if that is a yes,
Yes.
then then this would be an application of law to a set of facts, and it would be a quasi judicial hearing.
So from a parliamentary standpoint, prior to us asking questions of the proponent, we should have opened the floor. Is there anyone else here in attendance? Then brought the proponent back up as we did for the SPRs.
Correct. I mean, you really, and the idea is this, in a full-blown quasi-judicial hearing, and I think the only one probably that the community has seen would be the Circle K hearings back in January. But in a full-blown hearing, you would be giving the participants not only the opportunity to offer their testimony, offer their information, for third parties to offer their information, but also be subjected to cross-examination by the counterparties. And you would want to see and receive all of that information before you then proceed to ask questions of them. So the point at which you would close that testimony would be after everything has been offered, all cross-examination has been offered, all interveners or members of the public who want to offer information to you have had that opportunity, cut it off, and then move to Q&A. And the Q&A would be questions that it arises from or it is tied to the information they provided, if we want to be hyper-technical about it. I think in this circumstance here with the his certificates of appropriateness, unless you've got a room full of people, again, as long as you are clear that there have been no ex parte communications, there are no conflicts of interest, your decision's based on the facts presented and competent substantial evidence, you're good if you hit those criteria, particularly in the more relaxed forum of the Historic Preservation Agency.
All right. Just want to make sure if this wasn't one of those stepping on toes moments, because we didn't do it in just the right order.
It is not. You just want to give everybody a chance to be heard and base your decision only on what they say.
All right. That being said, I'll repeat the previous statement. Is there anyone here in attendance that would like to speak either for or against petition COA 24-11 as proposed? You swear the testimony you're about to give before the board this evening, to the best of your knowledge and ability, is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
You know the drill.
Alright, Sylvester Warren, 930 Northeast Joe County. Mr. Chair and board, I've come to quite a few of these and I really appreciate Mr. Liddick how you run your meetings. It's unfortunate that I've had to observe how the new legal counsel have come and, in my opinion, put a hamper on the local flavor of how things have been done in the historical district. I think the young man made it extremely explicitly clear, and I hope the board grasped what he said. His best friend and neighbor doesn't have a problem with it. The color is, I think he said, some form of gray. And right next to me, where I have a two-story building, it was a piece of crap that I made nice. You have the attorney that has a blue, like, nothing historic about it, blue roof on it. Can the man please get his roof on his building? I mean, that's, I mean, I don't think that some of the highly technical information that the attorney is given helps to make it easier for the board members to make decisions on things as simple as what the proponent is asking, and really convolutes things in my opinion. And I just pray that y'all would honor the work that he's trying to do to, in my opinion, that would help improve the district that a lot of us are part of. I think a lot of us live in that district or either own property in that district. I consider it to be an enhancement. And so I'm in favor of it, and I hope that the board would be as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in attendance wish to address the board? All right, seeing and hearing none, do we have a motion to close public comment and testimony?
Second?
Ms. Wilson and Mr. McMahon on the second, by hand sign. Hands down, likewise opposed. All right, presentation of evidence and public comment has been closed on this petition. Discussion amongst members of the board and potentially city departments.
I know you're concerned about those roof tiles, let's hear it.
I know the U.S. Department of the Interior, Secretary of the Interior standards for the rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic structures. I know this isn't a recommended treatment, but I know we've let these things go by in the past. Just because I do this for a living and I'm a hard stickler for some of the rules should not influence you in the slightest about how you would care to vote on this. But I do not believe, in my professional and educated experience, I do not believe that this petition complies with Article 10.11.2 subpart 2 of our land development regulations. However, we know that those tiles cannot be replaced in any other monetarily simple manner.
Okay, you can't do a layover. It's not practical.
We've asked numerous previous owners if they could do a roof over to preserve the original tiles underneath. Some have been able to, some haven't. A lot of it has to do with, as the proponent said, the degree of weatherproofing and vapor barrier you already have existing up in the attic space. We've bent this rule an awful lot in the past, so vote how you want to vote.
Well, there's multiple kind of surfaces on this roof. I mean, it sounds like they're all, we can call them back up, like they've all gotta go, I guess. Is there, if they
And that
kept
was-
one section
That was
over
the
a
same-
door,
That was the same thing we experienced with the Hurlong house was.
the one by Burger King?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In testimony given, they said where possible, they could preserve some decorative elements during the process of re-roofing. They discovered that in fact, no, they couldn't. It's a very difficult roofing material to deal with.
It is, and what I'm seeing, it's in pretty rough shape. And I totally get what he's saying as a professional. Insurance and the weather in Florida and everything, you can't keep them. This is not as, in my opinion, it's not as distinctive as what was on the house by the lake, which we approved quite a while back, the law office. You know, it's not those sort of decorative metal plates, these look like shingles.
They are, they're impressed and stamped tin shingles. Relatively common for that time period of construction.
So if there's a little bit of a range of, you know, desire to keep the fancy schmancy ones versus plain ones, you know, this would be a plainer look of the old stone shingles. Okay.
Anyone else, discussion amongst board?
So you find that roofing anywhere in that area?
Numerous structures still retain that.
Retain the old style?
Yeah.
But numerous ones have metal roofs too, including the neighbors.
Correct. But there are still several structures in the neighborhood that still retain them. No doubt they'll be coming before us and we'll end up probably approving roof overs for those as well, because it's just, economically, it's not a product that is easily rehabilitated to 10.11.2 subpart 2 standard.
St. John Street is hot.
It is.
So basically, you really almost really can't help the matter except replace it with the new roofing. It's almost inevitable, really, especially if the other ones are coming along and if this product is not on the market or sold anymore to purchase anything to its liking or.
Oh, it's available, it's just prohibitively expensive.
Super expensive.
There are so many other homes in the neighborhood that already have the new roofing.
It's already a pretty good amount of money there. We just got a car on Friday that cost about that much money. So I feel for the people homeowners.
There was really no other choice but to go ahead and get the new roofing on there and replace it, especially if the others are coming behind. It's really almost inevitable.
Hurricane season is here.
Yeah.
I've got one in my house, trust me, I know. All right, any further discussion amongst members of the board? All right, at this time, before we vote, Mr. Martin, something that you helped brief us on the last time this issue came up of using a non-conforming material for the benefit of our new members. Would you like to explain how sometimes shall and should you don't necessarily have to shall if it's gonna be an extra $1 million to do this. You briefed us about how the LDRs give us some wiggle room in passing things that are not in 100% compliance if they are in substantial compliance with the law.
I think you just did about as good a job as I could do,
But I want our paid attorney on record telling us.
and what I will add to that is sometimes you have to look at saving the patient even though you may have to lose a foot. And that's what we're doing here. To save the entire building, you may have to, which is the overriding thrust of the historic preservation laws is to try to preserve as much of the architectural character as possible. And here, if you do not approve what is an economical but somewhat suitable replacement for the structure, then you don't replace the roof at all, and then you lose the structure. So sometimes within the context, you have to look at the overriding or overarching thrust or emphasis of the particular regulations when it comes to historic preservation. And like I say, you may have to lose the character of the particular roof it has now by something that may not have quite the character in order to save the overall structure.
All right, seeing no additional discussion amongst members of the board, do we have a motion to either approve or deny COA 24-11 as submitted?
Move to approve COA 24-11.
Second.
Ms. Douglas on the motion, was that you, Ms. Mary?
Yes.
Ms. Mary on the second. Mr. Young, will you please call the yeas and the nays?
Ms. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. McKellum,
Yes.
Mr. McMahon,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Leidig.
For reasons stated earlier in regards to section 10.11.2, subpart 2, I vote nay. All right, by non-unanimous vote, congratulations. Go save that old bird. Oh, you got another one too? All right, under new business, COA 24-13, submitted by Cool Chicks for Christ LLC as owner, requesting a certificate of appropriateness in a commercial general zoning district as established in section 4.12 land development regulations, located within Lake Isabella National Historic District, as established in section 10.11.2 of the land development regulations on property described as City of Lake City parcel. And that section is blank. Colloquially located at street address 207 South Marion Ave. Since we're gonna do this in a quasi judicial fashion at this time, Mr. Young, would you like to introduce this one prior to us bringing up the proponent?
If I could just do the ex parte inquiry first.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to ask
Oh.
on each one of them in the
Gotcha,
beginning.
gotcha.
We separated this one. The ex parte communication,
That's
Mr. McMahon, okay, Ms. Douglas, Chair Leidig,
None of the
Ms.
beneficial
Wilson,
uses.
okay, Ms. McCollum. Okay, thank you.
For benefit of the record, the parcel is 12768-000. As you said, 207 South Marion Avenue. They want to install a new shingle roof onto this structure. Apologies to turn. The structure is located at the corner of South Marion Avenue and Southeast St. John Street. This is the southeast corner. By the pictures that you have there now, you should be able to see what the roof looks like. It is a looks like wood shape.
It's a shape, yes.
Yeah.
Although the cupola appears to be possibly a metallic material.
Yeah. It's, they want to replace it with a asphalt shingle material with the color that would match in. And that's about all I've got on it.
All right, you'll be entering all this into evidence with Mr. Clay?
Yes, I will.
All right, you may be seated, and if we need to, we'll call you back up. All right, at this time, do we have someone on behalf of the proponent that would like to come forward? And I remind you, you are still under oath. Please explain petition COA 24-13 to the board.
All right, this roof is a cedar shake roof. I don't think it is historical. I believe it was installed back in the 90s or early 2000s by a different contractor. There are some areas that we are keeping. The customer expressed they do want to keep the gutters. I believe those are historical that were kept by the last contractor. We are keeping a lot of the ridge cap, trellis, kind of decorative stuff that they already have there, so we are preserving as much of the original roofing as possible. The cupola and the areas where it looks like it does have a metallic shingle is actually a asphalt shingle, specialized asphalt shingle.
Wow.
It does look metallic, but it is asphalt.
Is that gonna be replaced
Yes.
with the shingles?
We have to tear everything off down to the trusses again. The cedar is currently leaking visible holes from the attic, causing damage to the structure. We are putting plywood down, vapor barrier, and then new asphalt shingles. And I believe they opted for kind of a higher wood rating shingles too, but the color will be relatively similar to what's up there now, as much as we can match in wood shingle.
All right, any other evidence you would like to present at this time?
That's it.
All right, please be seated, we may end up calling you back up.
All right.
All right, at this time, is there anyone else in attendance that would like to speak either for or against petition COA 24-13 as presented? All right, seeing and hearing none. At this time, have you come back down? So for the benefit of myself and the board, so in your packet on page 18 of 23, the white, almost dental or filigree or gingerbread looking caps at all of the peaks, those
Yes.
are to be retained,
Correct.
as are ancillary architectural items such as the small turrets that are at the end of those, the wind vane features, and the historic metal gutters and downspouts.
Correct.
One thing I did notice that was missing from this proposal, you have an example of the shingle product to be used. There's no visual representation of that in the package.
Yes, I have a sample for it. It's not a full shingle, but it does show the color and approximate.
Could you please hand that to Mr. Young so that it can be entered into evidence?
So which one is it?
It is the weathered one, I believe.
And then can we see that that gets a exhibit number?
Yes.
Find the front of it.
So while he's sending that down, I do believe you were correct that the cedar shake went up during the life of the structure. I do not believe, based on the historic photographs I've seen, this originally would have had a cedar shake roof to it. Or if it did, it had been replaced with metal at some point in time. In general, what was your thought process for taking this building to modern asphalt shingle when the previous structure you just appeared for, you decided to replace with a metal product?
That was a customer preference. They wanted to go with something that had a similar color and somewhat of a similar look. And an asphalt shingle is the closest thing we can do to match the color and kind of texture that the roof has there now. And it's also easier to preserve all of the ridge cap trellis and historical artifacts with a shingle roof versus a metal roof.
And these will be what they traditionally call the architectural shingles, where they're slightly offset tab and have the
Correct.
appearance of a cedar shake from 20 feet away.
Yeah, it will have somewhat of a dimensional look, kind of what's up there now.
It's not the standard, go pick it up at the home repair warehouse.
No, this is,
slabs.
Yeah, no, this is actually from our supplier, so it is a little bit different, but it is your standard architectural shingle, just a little bit more upgraded.
And which color did you say it was gonna be?
Weathered wood.
Weathered wood. Pass this down.
Which one's the way that?
And that will be the same product used for the cupola?
Yes.
We can send that back down. All right, that's all I have for the proponent. Anything else from members of the board for the proponent? All right, you may be seated.
Thank you.
Any desire to call Mr. Young back up? Any questions we have for city department? Hey, you're off the hot seat. All right, we already do a motion to close public comment and evidentiary testimony? Okay. At this point, do we have a motion to close presentation of evidence and public comment on petition COA 24-13?
Move to close public comment?
Mr. McMahon? And Ms. Wilson on the second. By hand sign? Hands down, likewise opposed? All right. Public comment and presentation of evidence is now closed on this petition. Any final discussion amongst members of the board prior to calling for a motion to approve or disapprove? All right. Anything you need to legally add from a housekeeping standpoint, Mr. Barrister?
No, Mr. Chair.
Alrighty then. At this time, do we have a motion to approve or disapprove petition COA 24-13 as submitted by proponent?
Move to approve COA 24-13.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. That's Mr. McMahon and Ms. Douglas. This time, Mr. Young, will you call the yeas and the nays?
Mr. McMahon,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. McCellum,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy.
While I feel this material is much more in keeping with the notion of like-in-kind replacement, shingles for shingles, as opposed to metallic shingles for metal sheets, I'm gonna vote yay on this one. I don't believe it fully conforms with the full faith of 1011.2.2, but I think it much more substantially represents a like-in-kind replacement. So with that being said, and by unanimous vote, congratulations, go save that old bird.
Thank you, board.
We have one item on the consent agenda, COA 24-12. Mr. Young, would you like to come to the podium, introduce the consent agenda for the board's ratification?
Mr. Chair, while he's coming up, any ex parte communications on this one?
None.
No.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll do better, I'll read them all at once like we talked about next time, now that I know. And you could have stopped me at any time. Mr. Young?
Okay, this is a certificate of appropriateness on the consent agenda that was issued by the Growth Management Department. Being how that it was of a minor nature and that the colors chosen were colors that were for the time period of this building and seemed to match in. It was a gray paint for the building with a black trim on it, which I think you have the colors.
They were in
And
the-
again, we approved it in our office because it was just a minor, and the paint, again, colors seem to fit the criteria for the year this building was built.
It's page 115 of the packet. Colors. That's of the entire.
I've got it as 11 of 14 in this specific.
In that one. French gray, Winchester gray, and tricolor black.
All right, anything else?
That's it.
All righty. You may be seated. For the benefit of our newest members of the board, within your land development regulations, the COA process has categories. Very simple routine maintenance and or minor work has the ability to be approved at the departmental level prior to having to show up on the floor here. We're not in the business of, every little, hey, I'm gonna replace my downspout with like in kind, needs to come before the board and be looked at. So we have this process built in whereby the department can look at it, rule that it is of a minor nature, not a major nature, doesn't need to come before the board, and is in substantial compliance with the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines for historic preservation. What we are doing now is ratifying that decision as this board. So that project has already been approved, they've already been given their COA. We, in our official capacity, are just ratifying the decision that was made there. Any discussion amongst members of the board? All right, seeing and hearing none, do we have a motion to ratify the consent agenda as presented by the Department of Growth Management?
Motion to ratify.
Second.
Wilson and McCellum on the second. Mr. Young, will you please call the yeas and the nays on ratifying the consent agenda as presented?
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Ms. McKellum,
Yes.
Mr. McMahon,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy.
Yay. By unanimous vote, we have ratified the consent agenda. This time, are there any workshop topics that we would like to discuss under our duties as the Historic Preservation Agency? Anything for us from our attorney's rep or from the department?
Nothing from council.
Hearing and seeing none, at this time, do we have a motion to adjourn Historic Preservation Agency, City of Lake City?
Motion to adjourn.
McCellum and Wilson on the second, by hand sign. Aye. Hands down, likewise opposed. Congratulations to our new members, we stand adjourned.
So what